Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is part of the Virtual Day for Research at UL. My name is Felix Morgenstern, and today I'm going to talk to you about my experiences of undertaking a research PhD at the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance at the University of Limerick. So first of all, I'm going to give you a bit of background information about myself. I'm a practitioner of Irish traditional music. I play the uilleann pipes and the bodhrán, and originally I'm from Berlin, Germany, but moved over in 2012 to complete a BA in Irish Music and Dance, and stayed on to do my master's in ethnomusicology, which is a field that basically looks at why human beings are musical and how that manifests in different ways right across the globe. And so I started off by writing my BA final project on the topic that I'm now conducting PhD research on, which is the experience of Irish traditional musicians in Germany. So asking essentially why German practitioners connect with Irish traditional music in very particular ways, and what happens with this idea of Irishness when it is performed within a different cultural context. So, as I mentioned, I'm an active practitioner and ethnomusicologist. I'm also funded by the Irish Research Council, Government of Ireland doctoral scholarship, which is finishing up in September, and I'm just writing up my dissertation at the moment, and I hope to submit very soon. So, looking back at this experience, I suppose this presentation is really to give you a sense of what that journey looks like and breaking it down into the different elements. Just some background information on the research project that I'm doing. So my research interests is basically Irish traditional music practices and discourses in different cultural contexts. In this case, I'm looking at Germany, my home country, and within this area of transcultural music studies. I also have more broader interests in the realm of music revival, and the intersections the cross sections between music and multiculturalism, race, social class, gender, masculinity, all these kind of topics. And these are themes that would have emerged in the process of conducting my PhD research as well. So first of all, to give you some more context on this project that I'm finishing up now, it's basically fueled by the primary research question, which asks what are the factors that inform the historical and the contemporary discursive and performative ramifications of Irish traditional music making among practitioners who are German nationals, and how are discourses and musical practices, as well as historical and contemporary perspectives, recursively related. So out of that primary research question, which hasn't changed, by the way, emerged two aims. So the first one is to trace how as I said, these narratives are related, recursively related. So the discourse and musical practice, as well as the past and present experience, and how these narratives are then fashioned, contested, or disruptive, or how do people mediate these discourses, and who's in charge, which brings us to the second aim, figuring out who controls these narratives and what are the trajectories through which they do so. Is it top down, is it bottom up, or, as I'm finding now, is it a particular combination of both? So on to the act of actually undertaking a research project at UL. So I've decided to break this down into several phases, as I call them here. So in June 2017, while I was at a graduate workshop in Prague, I completed the application for my PhD, which was due to commence in September that year. I just finished my master's thesis was about to be submitted, so I was all set to embark on this PhD journey. So what I did in the proposal phase is basically you're drafting a research proposal outlining your topic, the subject matter, and the research questions underpinning this, and the particular aims and objectives that are guiding you. You're laying out your proposed methodologies, and of course you also have to demonstrate your awareness of literature that's out there in the field. So a literature review is part of this proposal. And one kind of primary thing to watch out for here is you need to clarify what you intend the original contribution to knowledge to be, because that's what a PhD does in the end. Also, have you thought about supervision? Who's going to guide you on this journey? Who's going to supervise you, and what's their particular skill set? And maybe also propose timeline towards completion. So what do you envision yourself doing in each year of the program? And then you essentially submit this to a panel, which is the research academic panel at your particular faculty. For me, it was the Irish World Academy. And they met, and I Skyped in. As I said, I was in Prague at the time, so I Skyped in. And we just had a very constructive conversation about the proposal, and faculty members chimed in and gave me some helpful guidance on how to potentially refine it. And yes, we just had this exchange, and then I was accepted into the program. So when I started in September, I initially just went on and did a review of existing literature that's out there. So I started reading, note-taking, writing, and figuring out what are the kind of core themes that are coming out of this literature and what might be worth pursuing down the line, and how can that frame my fieldwork, which is the act of actually going out somewhere and doing your research with people and gathering data. The second thing then that was sort of coming up at that point was thinking about financial support, applying for funding. So initially I was lucky that I got funding through my department by way of a fee waiver, but I also wanted a more long-term solution to that, so I applied for the IRC postgraduate scholarship scheme, which is the Irish Research Council, and that process took me from November 2017 to March 2018. So it was quite an intense period of time, but it was worth it. I'll focus on this on the next slide. And then the next phase, so from January 2018 all the way to now, was my data collection phase. So I went out, did my interviews with people, observational activities, observational field notes, for example, and I coded the interview material that I gathered and started writing up. And this is something that I would emphasize here. What I found really helpful is this idea of getting into the mindset of writing and articulating your ideas and putting them down to paper as early as you can. And this really makes it easier in the long run, in terms of refining your ideas and being as articulate as possible about them. And the final point here is that each year you're sitting a research progression panel, and this is kind of an ongoing process. Every year you just present the progress of your work to your two members of your faculty, and they give you guidance, same as with the proposal phase, but it's more targeted to what has come out of your research in that particular time frame. Yeah. So on the next slide here, we have some more details on the funding application. As I mentioned, in my first year of the PhD, I applied for the Irish Research Council Government of Ireland Postgraduate Scholarship Scheme. And what that was essentially it gave me 2 years of funding, which covered my fees, gave me a monthly stipend, and also covered direct research expenses such as travel, subsistence, any research materials that I needed to get, such as recording devices and these kind of things for my interviews. One thing to note about the Irish Research Council scheme, and you can check this out on the website, which is research.ie. It's a highly competitive scheme. It's internationally assessed by experts and also by a lay audience, so people that wouldn't necessarily be familiar with your field. So you have to be really careful when drafting this and bearing in mind the kind of audience that you're speaking to. But it's well worthwhile. So what they're assessing is the strength of your proposed research and what contribution you're going to make to a particular field of knowledge. And also the link between yourself, the skill set that you're bringing, the skill set that the institution is hosting, and the supervisor that is going to guide your project within that particular area. So all of that is going to define the full package of this funding application. And it's a valuable resource to go back to for sure, because what it is you're narrowing down, you're really crystallizing your research questions and your aims and what's guiding you and what you hope to get out of it. So this is in regardless of the outcome, it's always a valuable resource to go back to. And in my case, this might change depending on whether you decide to apply for it. But in my case, there was a UL internal review process before the final submission to the IRC, where we got two different reports from reviewers and within the university, and it was really helpful in terms of narrowing down even more. And then that led to a longer period of dedicated drafting and rewriting and refining of the proposal, because it is a limited word count, so you want to make sure it's in the best shape possible and as clear and concise as it can be. And then in November I submitted it and got the outcome that it was a successful application in March 2018. So that's kind of the time frame you're talking about here. And just to talk about what this has actually contributed in terms of my work, so it has enabled me to conduct really a better type of field research, a better, more extensive, more intense kind of data collecting that I potentially wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't got the funding. So, and I also was able, I was fortunate enough to be able to focus solely on the write-up of the research thesis and to spend time and energy on that rather than having to work on the side and these kind of things, and it puts food on the table while you're busy focusing on your full-time research activity. And I should mention it is really a full-time commitment for the time you're involved in this. That shouldn't be forgotten. And in terms of dissemination, so going out to conferences and that kind of stuff, I mean, it enabled me to travel to conferences, not just in Ireland, but in a European framework and later also the US. So it was really a superb help to the progress of my research, and I'd highly recommend it. So then when we think about the kind of the typical day in the research office, I put this together and I was just trying to chart out the kind of typical 9 to 5 sort of working routine that I have. And I should mention that it's a very self-directed kind of process doing a PhD, so sticking to a fixed or more or less fixed routine helps. For me, it was 9 to 5 at the start. It tends to get longer as you go on, depending on how much work you actually have to do. But this was sort of the average 9 to 5, and it's self-directed, self-motivated kind of work as well. So I basically split up my day then, depending on what I had to do. So I had some time for reading, for text analysis, and also the bulk of it was time allocated towards writing up my thesis at the desk at the time. But of course, now in these unprecedented times, a lot of it will also be happening at home, and it is possible at home because that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, and you're just sometimes also then you're engaging obviously in library research, looking up online sources, printed sources. And it's important to take a break every now and again, because you have to structure your day, self-motivated, and you have meetings on a regular basis with your supervisors based on what you submit to them, what you hand in, and they give you constructive feedback on how to modify or how to carry on with your research project. And I was also fortunate enough to be doing some teaching on the side, so I got to test out some of the ideas that I was coming up with and some of the stuff that I was writing in a classroom setting and delivering it to students and applying it to what they were working on. So this is really valuable. And then I started disseminating my work as soon as I could. So put in abstracts for conference presentations and also drafting articles for publication. And this was really valuable because you get early on you're getting the kind of rigorous feedback on your work that you need in order to critically take a step back and assess whether it's worth pursuing a certain path with your work. And I would encourage you to really take an advantage in doing that kind of dissemination work as well. It's really important because it can be so easy to just isolate yourself in your research room or wherever you are working and just yeah, kind of cutting yourself out from the exchange, which is really important, and it's especially important in the early stages of doing a PhD because it shapes your outlook on the project. Um, yeah, and then I just took advantage of stuff that was going on in the university as well, seminars, webinars, professional skills, research skills, all these kind of things that are offered through the University of Limerick. And this was really good because depending on what you're working on, you can find things that will help you with handy skills to have. So if we move on to the next slide, this is some insight into my fieldwork process. So field research means you're going out into a physical research setting, or if you're doing it online, it's called netnography. So you're working with people and communities online in an online setting, which is also gaining traction, not just because of the times we find ourselves in now. So before you go out and do your fieldwork, it's important to remember that you need ethical approval for your research, and this can be sought from the relevant research ethics committee that is within your faculty. And once that application is approved, you can go out and you conduct fieldwork in whatever your region or your area of interest is. At least in my case, that's what I did. So I went to Germany, to different parts of Germany between 2018 and 2020, and interviewed people and conducted what's called participant observation. So I played music actively with these people in situ, observing what was happening, taking notes, taking field notes, journaling my experience, and then conducting follow-up interviews with people as well via Skype when I returned to Ireland, because sometimes these field trips can be very intense, and it actually helps when you take a step back from it and you revisit some of that. So yeah, then these kind of fieldwork interactions really generated some unexpected insights as well, or unexpected content that I wasn't aware of before. And this was for me, this was an issue of for example, the gendered nature of music making in these contexts, the role of hegemonic masculinity and also class privilege. So what enables these people to play that kind of music is often also to do with economic wealth and the kind of money they earn and how much they are able to afford. So this is not to delve into it too much, but to give you a sense of the kind of unexpected or seemingly unexpected things that are emerging within a PhD research project. And yes, so all of this came up, and then I did some historical research, some archival research as well in Freiburg in Germany and in Berlin as well. So then a brief outlook on research dissemination opportunities. So I presented my work primarily in the context of conferences, academic conferences within my field, and this happened on a national level here in Ireland, but then I gradually moved to a European and eventually also a US American platform. And it was good because within Ireland there's a lot of societies, a lot of academic societies that will have designated student research conferences as well, and this is the bulk of the kind of conference attendance that I did here, and it helped me refine my work, getting to know the peers from other institutions within Ireland, and then moving on to this trans-European platform widened the scope for that exponentially. So what you're doing there is you're exploring different aspects, different facets of your research through a conference presentation, depending on the call for papers, obviously. So, and another thing that I found really useful was I participated in graduate workshops in my field in ethnomusicology in Germany, in Finland, in Prague and Czech Republic, and I just worked with distinguished scholars in my discipline, and it gave me a whole different outlook on it. And doing a PhD during your time embarking on this PhD journey, this is really a worthwhile experience to take hold of, because again it broadens your perspective on the whole issue. And then of course conferences also give you an opportunity to generate publications, maybe be it through a volume of conference proceedings in journal articles or book publications, for example. And then also the kind of publication that is maybe for a non-specialist audience or a more generic publication like book reviews or online profiles or blog entries, these kind of things. And not to mention, while you're doing this research project, it may well be that you're linking up with peers within your department and you're doing more kind of bottom up, from the ground kind of organizational work as well. So we founded a postgraduate research forum at the Irish World Academy while we were there, and we hosted regular seminars for doctoral students, for other doctoral students, got guest speakers in, and we also hosted a large postgraduate conference at the start of this year. And again, I was able to link up with different researchers within my department and embarked, for example, on a student exchange with the University of Graz in Austria last year. And all of these things kind of came to fruition as well because I was keen on disseminating whatever I was writing at the time to a broader audience and within the university as well. Because you have to remember, doing a PhD, you're making an original contribution to a discourse that's out there, and many times that will actually lead to really interesting kind of exchanges that happen through that, you know. Just to give you a quick overview of what I have published and what I'm still anticipating to publish very soon. So I've published 3 pieces of writing so far, which grew out of my MA and my PhD work. The latest article just came out in Ethnomusicology Ireland last week, and then I brought out a German language book chapter and another English language article. And I have one publication in peer review for a volume of conference proceedings, which is also in German. So this is really an opportunity to kind of crystallize your work. And because with these publications, you're going through what's called peer review. So this is like quality assessment of scholarly work. So someone else reads your text and assesses this anonymously, and then you get feedback and it gets accepted or rejected by the journal. And this is a really worthwhile experience because not only are you getting feedback on your work really early on, but also if it gets accepted, it gives you an opportunity to really crystallize it down. And then sometimes what happens is when you go back to your PhD and you're writing that chapter in your PhD that is connected to the article, all of a sudden you're having this really nicely condensed, crystallized language to use and to put it into perspective, you know. So this is something to think about as well as you're doing this. And then some final thoughts before we wrap up. Why would you do a PhD in the first place? That's always the question, you know, a lot of people ask, you know, why would you devote 3 or 4 years of your life to a particular research topic or an area of inquiry? Number one is, of course, you should be passionate about what it is that you're researching. You know, that's the thing that's going to drive you on, even at the low points. You know, that's what I found, particularly so at the start of this pandemic, when I was moving into the write-up phase. What kept me going a lot of the times was really my curiosity, but also my passion for the topic that I was working on. And this is really important because you have to pick something that you're absolutely sure that you'll be able to keep going on, you know, even at the lowest point of the process, you know. You're producing publishable work, which of course demands a lot of time and effort as you're going through this. But you're really contributing your insights to a broader discipline, to a broader discourse, and you're making your voice heard. And you know, there's a lot of hard work and dedicated labor that goes into completing a PhD, but it's definitely a rewarding experience because it really offers a space for you to critically reflect, to write, articulate, and really send you on that journey if you are interested in pursuing an academic or even a non-academic career pathway connected to your project, for example. as I mentioned, there's lots of opportunities for dissemination, be it conferences, be it publications, and what's best about this is also you're establishing a network with other peers from within Ireland or even transnationally, and you're coming out with a body of really an excellent body of additional skills that would benefit you in so many ways. So you have the obvious ones like time management or organizational skills is demanded. But what I found as well, the biggest thing was to be resilient and dedicated, even at the challenging points. This is something that will happen. You're developing a lot of problem solving abilities, and you're able to communicate your work to a specialist and a non-specialist audience. And you're also learning how to work with other scholars in a theme or for collaborative research. This is really important. So yeah, if you want to send me an email, this is my email, felix.morgenstern@ul.ie, with any queries you might have. I'm happy to help. Happy to give you some more insights into not just what it is that I'm doing, but how to maybe approach applying and conducting PhD, applying for and conducting PhD research. And you can follow me if you want. If you are on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at f_Morgenstern. Thank you very much, and yeah, best of luck with your future research endeavors.